Hello, I'm Charles LeBuff. About a year or so ago, I thought I'd like to try to develop a series of videos that in which I discuss many aspects of Southwest Florida and more specifically Sanibel Island. And this is my start. If you like what you see, then please like it, indicate that you like it, and also subscribe. I hope to build this to at least 100 subscribers the first month. And if I attain that goal, then I'll continue with the series. This is something for me to do. I need to keep myself as busy as possible, and I like nothing more than talking about the old days, because the old days to me were very good. They were an important aspect of my life and my development. So we'll take them as they come. If you have a question that you would like discussed, something pertaining to the natural values of Sanibel Island, or some of the basic history, geology, wildlife, bird life, seashells, government, development, changes, and many other aspects, I'll be more than happy to get on them to the best of my ability. First of all, about myself, I came to Southwest Florida 72 years ago. My family and I, consisting of my parents, my two brothers and sister, and I, moved from Massachusetts to Bonita Springs. Bonita Springs is about 20 miles down the coast from Fort Myers. We moved into a rented home in Bonita Springs, and we all went to school in the Lee County school system. And I was a junior at the time, so I attended Fort Myers High School. And it's sort of funny, there were two guys in either one of my classes or a couple of classes, and they were from Sanibel Island. Their names were Jim Pickens and Ralph Woodring. I soon learned to identify them, and I shared one class, I'm certain, with Ralph Woodring. And several times during my months at Fort Myers High School, I would hear an announcement that the Sanibel bus was late again. And the name Sanibel was sort of a romantic term for me. It's something that caught my mental eye, so to speak. And I had met a young guy in Estero. He rode the bus to school with me. We became friends. And during the Christmas vacation in 1952, he borrowed his mother's car, although he didn't have a driver's license at the time. He picked me up at my home in Bonita Springs, and we went to Punta Rassa, got on one of the old wooden ferries. Its name was the Islander, and we made the 20-minute trip across San Carlos Bay to Sanibel Island. So I finally made it, and all of the mysteries about the name would over time be answered. But we did some shelling, and we explored, and we visited the Sanibel Lighthouse. And that was my visit to Sanibel. We collected live shells, and Don's mother worked for the shell factory in Bonita Springs. It hadn't burned down. It would burn down in a week or so. But we sold what shells we collected on Sanibel to the shell factory. Time went on and my parents bought a home in Naples, south of Bonita Springs, so our family moved to Naples, where I entered my senior year at Naples High School. In 1953, I met a young lady. Her name was Jean Williams, and we soon started dating. She was born in Bonita Springs in 1939. I'm giving her age away. I'm sorry, Jean. And she moved to Marco Island when she was very young. And life in Florida, Southwest Florida, back in those days, wasn't easy. It's changed considerably, but she said I could share this photograph of her home on Marco, where she lived for about at least 13 years. And the Williams family wasn't the only family that lived in such habitation. It was common on many of the coastal islands and in the outskirts of cities. Life was extremely hard growing up with no water, no electricity. But Jean and I married in 1957, actually on New Year's Eve. And if we make it this year, we'll celebrate our 67th wedding anniversary. Here's a shot of Jean and I on our wedding night. A very, very attractive young couple, don't you think? So in 1957, I had taken a position with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They had established a marine laboratory, a field station, to study red tide. Red tide is something I'm sure we'll discuss as time goes on. And they had established this lab at the Naples airport in one of the old World War II barracks buildings. And one of my jobs was to collect water samples various ways, by boat, by car, by seaplane, between Paso Grill, way up near St. Petersburg Beach, all the way down the coast to Marathon in the Florida Keys, and as far east as Lake Okeechobee. This was done by boat, by car, and as I said, by seaplane. And Tommy Wood, who was the first refuge manager of what was once known as the Sanibel National Wildlife Refuge, he was assigned as a part-time pilot to the Red Tide Lab. And many times he would fly to Naples, land in Naples Bay at Creighton Cove, and he would pick me or one of the other technicians up, and we would fly with him collecting water samples, both surface and bottom water samples at established collection stations. These were taken in small jars back to the laboratory where chemists analyzed them for chemical content, and people like myself and leading microbiologists assess the living organisms in the water. I learned to count red tide organisms, and it was a very interesting but very concentrated job. In late 1957, actually it was before I married, the lab relocated to St. Petersburg in a building next to the Don Cesar Hotel on St. Petersburg Beach. I decided I didn't want to go to Pinellas County. I was in love. I didn't care to leave Southwest Florida. And by that time, Jean and I had actually become engaged. Here's a photograph of us on the night that we became engaged. This photograph was taken in a little fisherman's shanty out in the middle of a mangrove forest in Bonita Springs. One of her girlfriends was married to a commercial mullet fisherman, and to get to the building where they lived, we had to walk on a boardwalk made of two 2x8 planks parallel that zigzagged through the mangroves to this little cottage, and that's where this photograph was taken. So I had sort of made a good impression on Tommy Wood. I guess he liked my work ethic, and we were friendly. And a few months after we married, I came home from work one night. I had taken a job as the primary leads Wonder Gardens in Bonita Springs. We'll be talking about that later too, I'm sure. It was an interesting part of my life. And Tommy called me. Gene told me that Tommy Wood called from Sanibel, and he wanted me to call him, so I called him, and he told me that the Fish and Wildlife Service had made a decision they would let him hire someone to become the second permanent employee of Sanibel National Wildlife Refuge. So I told him that I'd come up the next Friday and check the situation over and see if I was interested. I had that Friday off work. So I drove up to Punta. This time I got on a metal ferry named the Rebel. And again, I took the 20-minute passage to the ferry dock on Sanibel. And Tommy was sitting in an old military Jeep waiting for me. I got in the Jeep, and he took me to the Sanibel Lighthouse, where I had once walked around some, 5 years prior. And we went up in the small office in the Lighthouse building. The Lighthouse buildings and the property were managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they were refuge headquarters. And I soon learned that if I took the position, I was required to live in one of the buildings at the Lighthouse. The reason for that was to protect headquarters and have someone on duty when Tommy was off doing other jobs that he was assigned along both coasts of Florida, actually. So I looked at the building. It was quarters 2. It was the most eastern one of the two. And I was kind of shocked at the interior. It wasn't complete. There were no appliances or things like hot water heater, and it was kind of difficult. But I knew Jean could cope with that because of her early years, and she was an island girl through and through, more so than I was an island man. So I told Tommy I'd go home and talk to Jean and think it over, and I did so, and we talked it over. And I called Tommy and told him that I'd take the position, but I had a problem. My wife was expecting a baby. I guess she was 7 or 8 months along at that time. So I asked if we could postpone my entry on duty until after the baby was born. And lo and behold, on October 17th, 1958, our daughter Leslie was born. So we made plans to go to Sanibel, and I got a couple of friends of mine. One of them had a a pickup truck to, oops, I have a problem. Hold on a second. I called on a couple of friends of mine. One of them had a pickup truck. Their names were Richard Beatty, who I'm still in contact with, and Mert Snow, who I've lost contact with. As far as I know, Richard lives in Naples, and I don't know if Mert is still in the area or not. But Mert had a pickup truck, so we moved all of our belongings from our small apartment in Naples to the Sanibel Lighthouse. And we had time to kill. We swept out the house and arranged things the best we could. So we decided we'd take a ride around Sanibel so the guys could see it. Back in those days, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the Refuge, only had the Lighthouse property through an agreement with the U.S. Coast Guard, but they had purchased the 100-acre Bailey tract from the Frank Bailey family. They paid $5,000 for the 100 acres. There still are rumors that the Bailey family donated that to the Refuge, but that's not inaccurate. And then we also leased from the state of Florida about 2,000 acres in the mangrove forest on the north side of what is now Sanibel Captiva Road. So we made the move, and I started my first day of work, I believe, was January 5th, 1959. To accommodate ourselves, the house quarters 2 needed a great deal of work. And on the north side of that building, about 100 feet north of where quarters 2 was, there was a small cottage that was built in 1942 during World War II. And I'll discuss I'm sure, what that cottage represented and how it was being used by the Refuge. So we moved in there for 2 weeks. I asked my dad to come up and build some kitchen cabinets, and between the two of us, we did that, and we had to go purchase all of our appliances, although those appliances should have been furnished to us. I learned sometime later, but we had to go and hawk for about $1,200 just to make the building livable. So 2 weeks after my duty day started, I moved into the Sanibel Lighthouse, and I think I'll leave it at there, and I invite your questions. Please, the email to contact me until I can get this thing figured out and streaming live. Please email the address, and I will, my next broadcast or taping, I will respond to those questions. If possible, please leave your name so I can talk to you on the video one-on-one. And if you like this presentation, or if you think you like it, please hit the like button wherever it is on your system, and subscribe so I can build up the base on YouTube and make this a productive and educational aspect. So until then, I will say goodbye until next time, and keep Sanibel in your thoughts.